Councilmember Garcia,
Present.
Interim Mayor Pro Tem Cardenas Singh,
Present.
Mayor Marroquin.
Present. Alrighty. And at this time, can I have Councilmember Garcia lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
Hand over your heart. Ready, begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please remain standing. Councilmember Carter, will you please lead us in an invocation?
Please bow your heads. Dear Heavenly Father, we come to you just simply saying thank you. Lord, we ask you just to go through the school systems right now. Just protect every single school in the Imperial Valley and throughout the nation, Lord. We're asking for you just to take control of the minds and the mental health and the situations that are going on. And we ask this in your name, Jesus. Amen.
Amen. Madam City Attorney, will you please report out on closed session?
Yes, Madam Mayor. Today, the City Council had a closed session, which was to explore possible approaches
Recording in progress.
to the upcoming bargaining with all city units going forward. Obviously, the things you discussed were confidential pursuant to Section 54957.6 of the Brown Act, and those will be reported on later when negotiations begin.
Okay. Thank you, Mrs. Martin. Okie dokie, and now we move on to public comments. So this is our notice to the public that this is a public meeting. If there is an item on the agenda on which you wish to be heard, you are asked to complete a blue speaker slip and submit it to the city clerk prior to the start of the meeting. Persons wishing to address the council are not required to identify themselves. However, this information assists the mayor by ensuring that all persons wishing to address the council are recognized and also assists the city clerk in preparing the city council meeting minutes. When the item is announced and your name is called by the mayor, please step to the podium and state your name for the record. Unless the mayor extends the time, there is a 3-minute time limit for each public presentation. If you wish to address the council concerning any other matter not appearing on the agenda, you may do so during the public comment portion of the agenda. However, you may not show a visual presentation without review of that material. If you do so, you will be considered out of order. And so at this time, I do have one request, and that is for Mr. Jose Luis Gonzalez.
Madam Mayor and members of council, it is with sadness that I speak with you today, yet hopeful we will be able to resolve AWI's mistreatment and harassment of tenants, especially the children who cannot even use their bicycles around HUD complex here at Euclid Village. It seems more of a concentration camp than a safe haven. The managers Paola and Elizabeth are cold-hearted, especially Sonia, the district manager. They demand respect, but respect is earned. Many, if not all, of the residents are under emotional pressure to believe that they will be given write-ups and kicked out of the apartment complex. I believe HUD gave $6 million to improve government-based complexes in the United States. Many of the residents were offered money by management to leave because of AWI's invested in the upgrade. We signed close to 100 house rules. We won't be able to even barbecue with our families. Please help us. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Gonzalez. And so now we move on to a presentation, and we will be presenting the Dynamo El Centro Soccer Club for winning the National Premier League Championship in Denver, Colorado. So I would like to call up to the podium Mr. Jim Graham, Mr. Steve Walker, Mr. Sergio Germán, and Mr. Jorge Rivera. And I know that Mr. Walker requested to say a few words. So if any of you would like to speak on behalf of your team, please do so.
Well, I'll let the gentleman say a few words, but I wanted to give a big shout out mostly to the city of El Centro. When I got involved with youth soccer back in the early 80s, the city then and consistently since could not have been more welcoming to youth sports and particularly our soccer organization. From Conrad Harrison to Pat Urena to Adriana Nava, Christy Reicher before that, everybody's certainly been helpful, and the success that our organization, Dynamo El Centro Soccer Club, has had is a tribute to, good parks and good lights and all that kind of stuff. So that's a shout out for you guys. Dynamo El Centro Soccer Club was formed in the early 80s when a Scottish expat, Jim Graham, decided that there wasn't enough or appropriate level of youth soccer in the Imperial Valley. And so he, along with some other people like John Featherstone, federal judge Roger Benitez, and others, really got the ball rolling. I came in later in the early 90s, and since that time, Dynamo El Centro Soccer Club has had a large amount of success on a regional scale. We've got a couple of Southern California championships. We've got still sticks in my craw, the 1998 team. Came in second in penalty kicks.
Who was the goalkeeper?
The goalkeeper was your public information officer.
Oh, really?
Mario
Wow.
Correa,
What, Mario, why are you trying to divert attention
who-
to the
who
D?
who played with our two coaches that are up here today. And as anybody who's involved in youth sports will tell you, as much fun as it is to win, the greater pride we all feel is later on seeing that guys like Mario and Sergio and Jorge Rivera and other people who are working for the IAD or for the city or somewhere, a lot of them, Border Patrol, are making contributions to our community. So thank you for all that, and I'll turn it over to these gentlemen.
Thank you, Mr. Walker.
I'll be brief, and just so as you know, Steve's our president, and nothing would work in this club if Steve wasn't doing the work he does behind the scenes, which is fantastic. Steve said it's pretty special to win this national championship, particularly to have two of our ex-players, Sergio Arman, Jorge Rivera, on the staff. In fact, I'm the director of coaching. I didn't particularly coach this team. I just went for logistics and help in the background. Couldn't be more happy to coach under these guys. Fantastic. I'd also like to say there's a lot of things go into, Steve mentioned the city. I'd also like to acknowledge this fantastic group of parents right here. The amount of money they've spent, God only knows how much money they've spent dragging this team all around the Western United States. And 10 of these players play on the California State team. We've also been dragging the parents over to Phoenix for tournaments and stuff like that. But a credit to the city, absolutely fantastic. With that, Sergio Herman, head coach.
I just want to thank the city for having us, for presenting us, and of course, Jim and Steve for the positive impact they made in my life. Without them, I probably wouldn't be here coaching these boys. So, and just like Jim said too, thank the parents for all the work that they do, their commitment. So thank you guys.
Thank you. Are you a little shy? But we don't want to make you feel
The one thing we
uncomfortable.
didn't mention were the boys
Yes.
themselves.
Uh-huh.
Sergio's, that you're going to smile, Oscar. I swear like you're going to smile. There you go. First time I've seen that kid smile.
Oh,
Sergio on that.
One by one.
Yeah, just kind of pick your hand up and wait.
All right. Start off with Matias Estrada. You get a round of applause. Say all your names and we can have a round of applause. Emiliano Gonzalez, Ian Germán, Brian Burke, Miguel Escamilla, Jorge Sauceda, Dante Silva, Ian Hernández, Tadeo Reyes, Sebastián Álvarez, Laino Córdoba, Sergio Germán, Ricardo Munguía, Sebastián Germán, José Lomelí, Jorge Rivera, and Dr. Borales.
Colleagues, would you like to say a few words to the team?
Sure, Madam Mayor, if it's all right. I'd just like to take this opportunity to congratulate all the players, the coaches, and the parents. When we think about El Centro and leaving a mark at a national level, I congratulate you. If there's one thing about our Imperial County is we are full of heart and full of resiliency and really making a difference in our community. So I commend you, parents, for the great work that you do and having that opportunity to highlight with all of us this evening. Gentlemen, great job. You know, part of being part of a team, it provides leadership and teamwork. And on top of that, because I am an educator, it also helps with college. So make sure that you put that information down when you're filling out applications for scholarship or for college. So thank you for the great work that you do.
Gentlemen, phenomenal accolades. Congratulations on your success. It's a great achievement. To the parents, to the coaches, you make us very proud, and you will continue to have a great partner in the city of El Centro. Thank you for everything you do.
Councilmember Carter, would you like to say?
Yes, yes. I have a soft spot for children. So I commend you, really do. And I know that it takes strong parents to stand behind their children in order for them to be successful. And also it takes strong leadership. So I commend every single last one of you. Great job. Congratulations.
Councilmember Garcia?
Congratulations, first and foremost, to all the parents that have gone along this journey with their children. Having children myself in youth sports, I understand how difficult it can be traveling and making sure that they have all their equipment and making sure that they keep clean after a long tournament, and especially putting them in the car afterwards. That's always fun. But thank you so much for obviously supporting your children. Thank you to all the coaches and everybody involved in the organization for all the hard work and the hours that go on behind the scenes. It's not just practices, but it's coordination and getting all the logistics done, which is truly a labor of love. So thank you so much for being involved for so many years. And now to the champions. Congratulations, young men. You guys accomplished something that started the very first day you started with workouts and warm-ups. It's not something that came easily, and you guys were there. You guys put in the hard work and the determination and listened to your coaches, and look where it brought you to a championship level. So congratulations for putting our little city on the map at a national level. I'm sure they were wondering in Denver who exactly we were and where we were from, but you guys showed them by bringing home the accolades and bringing home that championship. So congratulations. May this experience serve you on other experiences in life when things get difficult. Remember, you guys are champions, and they can never take that from you. So congratulations.
Wow. Thank you so much. And at this point, I was going to say a few words, but I think my colleagues covered it all. Okay, so I would like to, gentlemen, I would like to present a certificate of recognition to the Dynamo El Centro Soccer Club in recognition of your hard work, dedication, and teamwork. Congratulations on winning the National Premier League Championship. And so would you like to come up and take a picture? Pardon? Yeah. We'd like to. Steve, where's your jersey, Steve?
Two lines. Everybody in?
Look at Mario. He's become a Joselito. I know.
Everybody look forward to the camera.
Here we go.
Paparazzi.
Give me the champion look. Yeah, that's good.
Congratulations, Steve. Bye-bye.
What's it? What's the name of it?
You click do it? I think you click.
Do the address maybe?
Okay, all righty. So at this time, we are going to move item number 12 on the agenda up to this, behind us presentation. So I would like to, and this item number 12 is a community sponsorship request from Women Haven, a Center for Family Solutions for their 7th annual Garden of Hope Mariposa Gala event. And we have a presentation by Mr. Cedric Cesenia.
Yes, Madam Mayor.
Roger.
Good evening. So Woman Haven, a Center for Family Solutions, submitted a request for a community sponsorship for its 7th annual Garden of Hope Mariposa Gala on October 25th. Woman Haven has provided essential services to victims of domestic violence in El Centro and Imperial County for 45 years, offering safe shelters, wellness programs, and housing and educational services. The event will raise funds to support their services. The various sponsorship levels that were available included the $1,000 for a friend sponsorship. The city manager's office has reviewed and confirmed that the application meets the policy requirements and recommends that the council consider a sponsorship of $1,000. So of today, the available balance in the community sponsorship fund is $3,077. We're seeking direction and any necessary action from you as a council to move this forward.
So I move that item, number 2. Would
I'm
you like to
sorry,
say-
Madam Mayor, I just want to double check with our city attorney. Miss Betsy, I will be a recipient of the Visionary Award for this event, and so I don't know if I have to abstain or can I vote?
You can vote.
Okay, thank you.
And that request is approved 5-0. Ms. Gina, would you like to say anything?
Good evening. I'm Gina Vargas, Executive Director for Woman Haven. It is a pleasure to be here with you, Madam Mayor and City Council members, to see the wonderful support that you guys provide to Woman Haven and understanding the dynamics of domestic violence in our community and our society. And the wonders of you guys supporting this, it also helps us bring awareness to the cause, because the only way we're going to eliminate it and reduce it is by coming together and talking about it. And it must be a conversation to be had, and for each of us to know of the resources that are available to us, so that individuals that may come across, because we believe everyone knows someone, would be what we will be stating for the month of October. Everyone knows someone. So what will happen is that you guys will be able to be informed and say, Woman Haven can help when home is not a safe place. So I want to thank you for supporting our cause. And as Mayor Pro Tem Martha Singh has mentioned, that she is one of those that believes in the cause, and because of her leadership, She's receiving the Visionary Award, recognizing leaders who have made a significant contribution to the fight against domestic violence. And for that, we applaud her for what she does for serving El Centro, but the community at large with her great heart and passion. It really shows through and it bleeds. So
Thank you.
thank you, Martha.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gina.
This is Christian Gamble.
Hi, Christian.
Hello. So thank you everyone for having us here. And as we mentioned, October is the month of Domestic Violence Awareness Month. And I know that on October 1st, we also have a proclamation.
Mhm.
And as Gina mentioned, our theme is Everyone Knows Someone. And we invite everyone to as well that if they would like to participate in our gala, we're selling individual tickets and sponsorships. And this day, October 25th, at the Old Eucalyptus, we're honoring survivors of domestic violence and also advocates. And one of them is Martha Cardenas Singh, who is our Visionary Awardee. And we will be also sharing other events too that we'll be having on the month of October. So once again, thank you very much for this opportunity. And we look forward to seeing you again on
Yes.
October 1st.
We'll see you October the
Thank
1st.
you.
All
Thank
righty.
you.
Have a good evening.
Thank you.
All righty, colleagues, so we move on to the consent agenda. All righty, and all of those items are adopted 5-0. And now we will then also jump to item number 10, which is a Finance Department update by Mr. Andy Heath, our finance consultant.
Moving right along.
Hi,
Thank you,
Andy.
Madam Mayor, members of the council. For the record, Andy Heath, the city's financial consultant. What I'd like to do for you tonight is actually give you an update of the finance department and a lot of the things that we've been working on over the course of the last 3.5 months that I've been around with the city of El Centro. We've made a lot of accomplishments, done a lot of different things, and are currently in the process of continuing to do a lot more for the city. So the purpose of tonight's presentation is to go through the following agenda. We'll talk about why we're doing this. Then I'm going to give you an update on the audit status for the years that have not been completed yet from an audit perspective, 22-23 and 23-24. I'll go through the financial forecast, which we did in earnest, I think on July 31st. We brought back the city's financial forecast for the general fund. I'll go through that again because that has been updated with some new numbers, particularly for 22-23, where we have been doing a lot of work to get ready for the audit for that year, and a lot has changed. We'll go through financial sustainability and look at certain fiscal practices that we are considering bringing back from a policy perspective back to the city council at some point in time in the future for consideration that would lead to better future fiscal sustainability citywide, and then invoke some different policies that the city's not currently doing. And then we'll go through 24-25 budget update, where we are with the budget, and then any questions that you might have, and go through some next steps. So why do a financial update? So obviously we do want to give the city council periodic updates, and the intent is to come back at least monthly over the course of the next 6 or 7 months to give you these updates, because there's just not much going on, and you need to be informed as does the public. But we want to provide you and the public with updated, transparent information, fiscal information that basically demonstrates that the city is in good fiscal shape, and what the city is doing to maintain the good fiscal shape that the city is in. To provide the city council with up-to-date information so that the policy decisions you're making at these meetings every other week can be made timely and accurately. Without good fiscal information, or with fiscal information that is not up to date, sometimes that's difficult to do. And you're making a decision on a whim sometimes with an understanding that perhaps the money's there, but we want to eliminate that. We want to give you good information when you are considering fiscal decisions. Provide information regarding key revenue sources and expenditure trends. A lot changes There's a lot going on with the economy that impacts revenues and expenditures. Well, we know what's going on with inflation. Inflation continues to go up. We know what's going on with a lot of the employment costs associated with health benefits, CalPERS benefits, et cetera. So we want to make sure you have that information on a timely basis as well. Provide information regarding future fiscal sustainability. That's what all of this does. And then we do want to provide you with an update on the compliance with certain legal requirements that are required by the city for fiscal activities, things like the budget. You have to have a budget. You have to have a legal appropriation ordinance that basically says you can spend money. Audit. You have to have an audit, okay? Last audit was done in fiscal 21-22, and they're just not up to date right now. They're getting up to date, and we'll go through that. And then any other activities from a fiscal perspective that need to be considered. Okay. Let's talk about the audit status. So for fiscal 22-23, at the present time, we are just about complete with the closing and adjusting processes for all the balances and all the funds in fiscal 22-23. Some of the things that we've been working on over the last month or so, making sure all the accruals, whether it's a revenue or an expenditure that belongs in that year, are posted to that year. We did a lot of debt adjustments where we're going through and creating workbooks and schedules so that when we do audits in the future, it's very seamless and we know what to do moving forward. We're going to have a complete file that's called an audit file, an electronic online file that staff will be able to go through in the future. Just check the boxes, check the list off. Everything will move over and it will be very seamless to do audits in the future. GASB updates, so you have to comply with GASB 68 for pensions, GASB 75 for OPEB, GASB 87, I believe, for leases, all of those things. So all of those are being done. And then fixed assets are also being updated as well with depreciation and capitalization of assets. The auditors are currently scheduled to be on site to conduct their audit on October 21st, the week of October 21st. So staff will be ready. I will be here likely 3 of those days to assist with the audit. And hopefully the auditors will walk away with everything they need. And about a month after that, we'll have our draft report. Okay, that's 2 years ago. Well,
Wow.
we know we just finished a year, fiscal year 23-24. So right now we are performing preliminary closing processes since the accrual period is over. The city has a 60-day accrual period, which means from July 1st through August 31st, there's a lot of transactions that occur that ultimately will go back to the previous fiscal year. So we really can't close anything until the start of September, which just happened. So we are in the process of doing that now with revenue and expenditure accruals. And then a lot of other year-end adjustment processes. So all the things I just talked about for 22-23 accruals, debt adjustments, all the GASB updates, all the balance sheet updates, those all need to be done for 23-24 as well. But we are doing those concurrent with preparing for the 22-23 audit. Although that audit is not yet scheduled for 23-24, it will immediately follow the 22-23 audit. So our auditors are on that. Okay, let's talk about the general fund forecast. So knowing that we are getting ready for the 22-23 audit, one of the things that I did is I trued up information you saw about 5 weeks ago, 6 weeks ago with the general fund forecast. I trued up the 22-23 numbers, knowing that things have changed, that we've changed. And that is the beauty of really having this model in the forecast. It's super easy to change. And you just go through, update the GL numbers, and everything changes on the fly within the model and the forecast itself. But when we presented the information to you 6 weeks ago, you can see we had revenues of about 35.8 million for 22-23 and expenditures of about 33.5. That led to an anticipated surplus being added back to reserves of $2.25 million, okay? But that did not include the activity that we've been working on over the last 6 weeks to prepare for the 22-23 audit. Today, the 22-23 numbers, 36.3 million in revenues. You can see we added about half in how much should we have? $570,000 in revenue. And then expenditures actually went down a little bit. to 33.2 million. So the surplus now for 22-23, which is a very close to reality number that you're going to see in your audit, is just over $3 million. So in 6 weeks, we have added $834,000 to the bottom line by just doing the normal closing processes. Some of the things that changed were cost allocations to other funds, where we updated that. Cost allocations from the general fund for certain overhead costs, administrative costs, to the sewer fund and the water fund. This is consistent with prior practices. Nothing has changed, but we did update that, and that added a little bit back. Revenue accruals, there were certain accruals that weren't done, particularly for TOT and your interest receivable. And then interest earnings themselves, we found had not been posted for the entirety of the year for the LAIF fund. So we went back and fixed that, and that's all updated. So as of today, you're going to have about a $3 million surplus for fiscal 22-23 in the general fund. What does that mean for the forecast as a whole? So if you go back 2 years for the year that has been audited in fiscal 21-22, you can see that we added back $3.2 million to the general fund. Okay, so that was added to fund balance. Given the update for fiscal 22-23, you can see we anticipate adding back an additional just under $3.1 million there. 23-24, as of the completion of this forecast, is about $707,000. So right now, preliminarily, we're looking at about adding another $700,000 back for 23-24. I do anticipate that to go up, okay? Because as we go back and start going into the intricate closing processes that I talked about for 22-23 and apply those to 23-24, you're going to see that number go up a little bit as well. Then you look at the current year, 24-25 and 25-26 and beyond. And you can see those surpluses come down a little bit. And there's a lot of reasons for that, and I'm going to go through what that is. But mainly, one thing I do want to mention is that between this fiscal year, 24-25, and fiscal year 29-30, your CalPERS unfunded liability that is charged to the general fund goes up by $1.8 million, okay? So $1.8 million more 5 years from now than it is this year. All of these numbers for each of these fiscal years include that impact. Okay, so those numbers are in these numbers because we know that's going to be the case, and we want our forecast to indicate that. So it's not good that it's going up by 1.8, but it's good that it's going up by 1.8, and your forecast is somewhat stable. Okay. All right. So looking at this forecast and going into what this budget is showing, what all those numbers that I just showed you assume is that you have nominal revenue growth and non-salary expenditure growth. So this assumes sales taxes are going to go up by a nominal amount, 1%, 1.5%. It assumes property taxes are going to go up by 2%. It assumes other types of revenues in the general fund are going to go up by a certain amount. Not all revenues, just the ones that are impacted by the economy. From an expenditure perspective, it also assumes that you have inflation growth, so materials, supplies, fuel, energy, contract, those sorts of things. Those will go up over time, and that has been assumed for each line item in the forecast. So all of that's in there. What this doesn't include, and I have this at the bottom, is any unnegotiated bargaining unit salary increases. So what we want to do, if we're talking about what the future looks like, we only want to include what we know, not what we're going to assume, especially from a labor perspective, and get ahead of the city council and making the decision on what the city can afford from that perspective. Because if you had a lot of surpluses and you started building in labor, then the presumption could be over time, you can afford that. You might get into a longer term contract. And then if something changes next year that we don't know about, then you could be behind the 8 ball immediately. Okay, so that's why we do it that way. But we're transparent in calling out that that's why we do it that way. Some of the other things that are included in the forecast are the CalPERS unfunded liability cost impact that I did mention. Vacancy savings. So when the forecast was put together, the general fund had 41 vacant positions in the general fund, and we built in 50% of the existing vacancy savings. Okay, These positions haven't been filled for a significant amount of time. I do believe that achieving 50% vacancy savings is going to happen. Okay. And so throughout this model, we have that. One thing I do recommend is in the next, next year, before the next budget's put together, is really sitting down with department heads, sitting down with the city council, and determining, what is the level of service and what is the staff required to deliver that level of service, so that you have a more realistic picture of your staffing needs. And from a budgetary perspective, that's what you're budgeting for. We also included updates to your workers' compensation funding with the known belief, or actually the know. We know that the workers' compensation fund is overfunded and has been overfunded for some time. So we lowered that. By lowering that, that raises the amount of, well, lessens the expenditure that's charged for workers' compensation to all the funds citywide, including the general fund. Update to cost allocations, I mentioned that. And then also, what this forecast assumes is that what you did this year with Measure P and using Measure P for your public safety non-personnel costs, about $2 million, continues into the future. Okay. We have put together a forecast for the Measure P fund, which you have not seen yet, that we actually took to the Finance Committee a couple of weeks ago, went through it with them, and we're going to vet that out a little bit more and see what we can do with that, and then ultimately bring that back to the City Council with one of these financial updates so that you can see exactly what's happening with Measure P and what some of the budgetary implications that are built into Measure P this year mean for the future for Measure P. So no surprises there either. Measure P is a very stable fund. Okay, so assuming that all of this comes to fruition, okay, this is what your fund balance looks like in the general fund. You can see that your fund balance varies between $24, $26 million over time. Keep in mind that this does not include any future labor negotiated increases that ultimately will be negotiated, but we can add those in once they are. But what I wanted to point out is that that $26 million represents 64% of your entire expenditure base in your general fund. Okay, the GFOA, Government Finance Officers Association, recommends that a city at a minimum have 2 months, or roughly 17% of in reserves based on your general fund expenditures. You have 63%. Very prudent reserve level. Okay, I'm not saying it's overfunded. Okay, but I'm not saying it's underfunded either. I think having reserves is extremely necessary. It really enables this city to weather any economic issues that might occur in the future. It gives you an opportunity to really look at perhaps using reserves in lieu of reducing service levels where something might come up that you have to pay for. And it enables you to make good decisions moving forward from a fiscal perspective. So this city, from a reserve perspective, is in very good shape. Okay, looking at how we can further enhance the fiscal sustainability citywide, and particularly in the general fund. I just wanted to go through this. So one thing I have found is that the city does have 2 Section 115, IRS Section 115 trusts that are set aside for 2 things that the city can have Section 115 trust for. One of those is for CalPERS pension, okay, where you set aside monies to eliminate volatility in the future, or the impacts of volatility on the expenditure base of rising pension costs, particularly for the unfunded liability. At the present time, you have $4.38 million in the Section 115 trust for CalPERS costs that can only be used for CalPERS. These monies were funded a long time ago by the city, prudently so, and these monies have grown over time by earning interest. So last year, in fiscal 23-24, that pension trust earned just over $250,000 in interest, $266,000. Today, it sits with a balance of about $4.38 million. I want to bring this up because, as I talked about back here, your CalPERS unfunded liability is going to increase $1.8 million between this year and 2029, 30, 5 years from now. Okay, knowing that that's going to happen and knowing that those costs are already built into these numbers by using the interest that's earned in this fund, roughly $300,000, you can take that interest, never touch the principal, apply it to the UAL cost increases, and thereby increase your surpluses in the future years, which allow you to pay for things that may not be built in the model, like labor costs.
Excellent,
Okay? So
excellent.
that's one thing. That is for the pension trust. Then you have your OPEB trust, okay? Your OPEB trust is, and again, this was funded many years ago, okay? Hasn't been funded since, but it was funded many years ago. You have $11.1 million in your OPEB Section 115 trust. And what this trust fund is for is can only be used for health benefits for retirees or health benefit costs, okay? Well, your health benefits that you pay for retirees on an annual basis are about $300,000, okay? So, and that $300,000, the majority of that does come out of your general fund. Some of it comes out of water, some of it comes out of sewer because there's employees that are charged there. That $300,000, okay, is again built in every year to arrive at these numbers in the future. To the extent the city were to consider using half of the interest earnings that were earned last year in the OPEB trust, you earned $700,000 last year in the OPEB trust, okay? If you use just half of that, you could offset that entire operating cost that's built in to these numbers here,
Excellent.
okay? Meaning that if you took $300,000 for the OPEB costs and $250,000 for your CalPERS costs, we've now upped every one of those numbers in the future by $550,000. Okay? So these are just, and again, these are just hypotheticals, just things that the city needs to consider moving forward from a budgetary perspective. And by the way, I'm not done going through all your funds. So I'm still going through every fund in the city, working with staff in the finance department to do this, asking a lot of very intricate questions on the why, the how, because I want to make you and the public very aware of where this city sits fiscally for everything that it does. Okay. Another thing that we need to look at for fiscal sustainability enhancement is reviewing the use of the internal service funds, where internal service funds are basically funded by all the other funds for specific purposes, things like workers' compensation. So this city pays a premium, an annual premium for workers' compensation. We'll call it between $1.8 and $2 million a year. It's a fixed premium. It's never more than that, okay? That fixed premium is the price that you pay. And today you have $4.4 million in your workers' compensation fund. And it's also funded from all the other funds for this year. So we may want to consider looking at lowering the amount that's funded for the workers' compensation fund and or using some of that money for one-time purposes. Similarly, group health trust, fixed premium is paid for group health trust. This money was built up over time because the city at one point in time had a self-insured health plan that no longer exists. So that money is essentially, barring any liabilities against that money, available for one-time use. Unemployment termination payouts, there's $1.3 million in that fund. And your motor vehicle replacement fund, which I do recommend having, by the way, needs a little bit more than the $374,000 that's in there. But what that motor vehicle replacement fund does is it receives funding from all the other funds on a recurring basis. And then when you need to buy a fire truck, when you need to buy a police car, when you need to buy a dump truck for public works, you have the ability to do that with the money that's in there. Okay, looking at our budget update. So I did mention, just kind of moving on, we did present updates to certain 24-25 budgets that your council did re-adopt on July 31st. You re-adopted a general fund budget, a Measure P fund budget, water and a wastewater budget. We went through all of those. We are in the process right now of going through every other fund, 100 of them, intricately, just like we did for those 4 major funds, and updating the fiscal schedules with noted fund balances. So made a lot of progress over the last couple of days that I was here. But ultimately, we will include the preliminary 23-24 information and all of the updated fund schedules for the remaining funds as well that you have not seen from an updated perspective. We'll also be looking at capital projects. Had a brief discussion with Liz today about that, and an outlay summary for fiscal 24-25, which will basically have your array of all your capital in one schedule that shows how it's funded, where it's funded from, how much it's funded for, and then ultimately what the expected completion date of that project would be. Okay, financial updates, next steps. What are we going to be doing? So we will continue to update the general fund forecast. That's an iterative document. I mean, it changes daily. And the more we can update that and give you better information, that's what we plan on doing. We will dig a little bit deeper into the looking at alternatives for use of that Section 115 money in future budgets. We'll look at alternatives to funding citywide internal service funds and the use of fund balances. We will present a revised fiscal 24-25 budget to the council for all the remaining funds, hopefully by the end of October, so the end of next month. So lofty goal, but we'll try to get there. And then ultimately, we will be doing another one of these updates to the city council no less than 4 weeks from now at the meeting, second meeting in October.
Wow.
That concludes my presentation. Fairly quickly, but I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Colleagues, any questions or comments for Mr. Heath?
Madam Mayor, if I may,
Yes.
it's amazing to the finance department, to everyone, Liz, Miguel, Andy, thank you so much for taking just your expertise to taking a look at an antiquated system and really putting into place, allowing us, not only us as city council, but department heads to have the opportunity to forecast and build upon what is really needed in their department, and having the fiscal analysis, the solvency to be able to make those decisions. And I just appreciate the great work, and it always ends on a good note when there's a surplus. Thank you.
Just in time, Councilmember Oliva, did you want to make any comments, or do you have any questions for Mr. Heath?
No, I very thankfully sat on the finance committee with you, Madam Mayor, and so a lot of this information I was already aware of. So thank you for all your hard work. Appreciate it.
Councilmember Carter, any questions or comments?
Just a simple thank you. You know, teamwork makes the dream work. So thank you. It took a team. So thank you to all of you.
Councilmember Garcia.
Thank you very much for everything that you've done. I mean, it's very, it's a lot better than what we saw before. And it's comforting to see that we're taking the future expenses into account, like CalPERS and things like that, that we know that are going to go up, and seeing that there is some light at the end of the tunnel, that we've been able to find some more surplus. So that's very comforting. Thank you.
So, Mr. Heath, I just appreciate the time and the dedication that you have shown us to really take a deep dive into our finances and to uncover and discover all of the the funds that we do have and the surpluses that we are forecasted to end with, for the next 5 years. I'm really curious to see, where those trust funds, where we can reallocate and what use we can put those to. And, I just want to say thank you for an excellent and very promising update on our finances for the city of El Centro. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Heath. And it's good to see you. We didn't get to see you this afternoon, so.
About 4 weeks.
Pleasure.
Thank you. All righty, colleagues. Okie dokie. So we are going back to item number 9, okay? And this is a public hearing to consider the recommendation of the Planning Commission regarding the Phase 2 zoning ordinance update. And so we have a presentation by Mr. Angel Hernandez, our Community Development Director.
Hello, good evening, Honorable Mayor, members of City Council, and those in attendance and those joining us via Zoom. The project before you is a project that the city started back in 2022, a couple months after the city approved their general plan update and around the same time that the city also approved the housing element update. So this has been a long project in the waiting. We did divide this project into 2 phases. The first phase was approved back in 2022, and that was to initiate the zoning changes that were called out in the housing elements. But I just wanted to for say, like, a lot of public participation, a lot of the events, this goes all the way back to 2019 when we first started our work on the general plan update. So what we're doing today right now is proposing ordinance changes to the zoning code primarily, but also making ancillary changes to the subdivision ordinance, the street ordinance, and other sections of the city code. So this slide is my attempt to kind of help summarize the things that we will be talking about today. So primarily, there'll be a lot of discussion about the residential development standards. There's been a mostly in response to implementing objective design standards, and I'll go into that into more detail, and that's in response to state law to make sure that cities have these standards in place. I'm also discussing the possibility of reducing open space requirements for these 2 to 4 unit multifamily apartment buildings and some of the creative ways we're trying to kind of meet the needs of the residents, but also make development more practical in some of the infill areas of our city. I'll also be discussing how we're proposing some amendments to the planning and development section. Now, this is a section that we have in our current ordinance, but it's not really used that often, and we want to entice more development to utilize it, be creative in proposing small lot subdivisions, but still meet the density requirements that are existing. And we're also making some adjustments to the single family to setbacks for single family homes, parking areas, and carports. Some other sections that we'll be discussing tonight are allowable uses and temporary uses. So the team went through the zoning code, and we did a lot of updates to a lot of the uses. Some of the uses were really antiquated, or we weren't sure what was meant, and maybe some terms are out of date. So we updated that to be more clear for the residents, for the customers, for us, and just make it more streamlined. We also added additional uses. As I mentioned, this project started in 2022, but it started a lot of the work, a lot of the community engagement, public participation happened in 2019, and then fast followed COVID, and there was a lot of changes about many aspects of the economy, retail uses, more desire for home occupation uses and temporary uses. So we incorporated those changes into the zoning code update. We also clarify when certain uses were required a temporary use permit. We amended some of the requirements for when a certain temporary uses need to go before the city council. We looked at parking and landscaping requirements, and that's also associated with the residential development centers, looking at the parking requirements for these 2 to 4 unit multifamily buildings, also retail development, reducing some of the restrictions on that. Also, we were changing the dimensions for the parking space requirements to be more consistent with other jurisdictions like California, and amending our recommended landscape list. The streets and subdivision standards. So this is mostly kind of moving some of these requirements from the subdivision ordinance to the street ordinance. And we're also implementing some of the requirements from our general plan to address complete streets requirements, and I'll go into that more detail. But that's also included a lot of clarification about like certain measurements when staff reviews these subdivision maps and lot designs. And the last category is just kind of like a grab bag of other things that we noticed. A lot of edits to clarifying like language, cross references that were corrected, references to state codes that had to be that were updated or had to be amended. Just a lot of work, and I really commend like the consultants because they were really thorough about going through the entire document, making sure that we're getting up to date document. And just two other things that just come up is so requirements about race receptacles and the use of public trash bins. I know that's been a concern in the downtown area regarding people using the public trash bins and maybe not using it for the right use. And also, we've got a lot of requests for barbed wire and electric fences, and that's something that we're now considering kind of taking that to a internal committee to review those requests on a project by project basis. Okay, so why am I presenting this now? So an important element of zoning and general plan is we gotta make sure that the zoning code is consistent with the general plan. As I mentioned, general plan was updated in 2022, in 2021, and the housing element was also updated in 2022. And we amended the land use. We adopted new land use elements, environmental justice element, housing element, and mobility element. So this is this is how we're going to be implementing those plans and policies through the updated zoning code. We also have several actions that are in the city's strategic plan that was adopted back in 2022 that called for a lot of these changes. And also we're taking an opportunity to make sure that these standards and our regulations are consistent with current state law. And a vast majority of this project was funded through some grants from HCD that were very timely. And this is kind of like why we started doing this, because we had the funds, we had to do it, of course, and it was in our plan work. So this slide kind of goes over the community engagement, the public meetings, kind of everything we've done. As I mentioned, I say a lot of this work started in October 2019 when we first updated the general plan. And that was the first event at the Product Center in 2019 where we went out to the plan. We had several meetings for the housing element update. We had joint meetings with the Planning Commission, City Council. There was, I brought before a lot of these specific topics to the Planning Commission to discuss and hear from them. I know there are certain meetings with the Community Enhancement Task Force where some of we're going to be discussing tonight was also mentioned. So, we will also have presentations with the Imperial County Association of Realtors, kind of letting them know that this is coming up. So I just want to make it clear, this has been kind of a long time making. There's been numerous meetings and regarding a lot of the changes that we're doing tonight. Okay, so the next several slides will be going over the updates that we're doing. And so these are the different sections of the city ordinance that we're amending. Primarily, the amendments are going to be under zoning, but there's also other amendments that we're doing to Chapter 24, subdivision regulations, Chapter 23, which is streets, sidewalks, and public places, and smaller amendments to Chapter 12, garbage, rubbish, and other solid waste, and Chapter 18, which is offenses and miscellaneous provisions. And so I'm going to go over a lot of the changes, and please feel free to interrupt me and ask me any questions regarding what I'm talking about. And also we have Katie Matchett from City Place Planning. She was a consultant and should be available if for some reason I can't answer a question. She could assist us. Okay, so Chapter 29 zoning. As I mentioned, we looked at the land use table and we eliminated a lot of antiquated terms. We updated new ones. We want to make sure that it's consistent with the needs community. For instance, we have large areas of the city that are zoned CT, which is tourist commercial, but for some reason, when that when that zone was first adopted, it would prohibit a lot of different uses like professional offices, and we've had requested to add those type of businesses to those areas. So we're updating that. We're adding new uses to kind of respond to kind of the changes that I mentioned that the city, that the project team saw during the preparation of the general plan. Things like e-commerce, commissaries, delivery-only kitchens, those types of uses that if someone would come to the counter, we wouldn't know exactly where to point to in our table in our zoning code. So we're addressing those standards right now. There's a lot of looking into home occupations too, because that's something else that we're seeing more. There's a lot of entrepreneurial spirit amongst the residents, and they want to open up businesses. And a lot of times these businesses are just kind of it meets the kind of spirit of the code, but literally does not allow them in our zoning code. Like things like people like tutoring some children, people having like piano lessons. So we're allowing that with certain restrictions, of course. Like you cannot have more than 2 students. Any type of you cannot use any heavy machinery, things like that, which is very common sense approach to that. We're also regulate like standards for looking at outdoor seating. Outdoor seating was allowed before, but we didn't have any kind of like standards or regulations to look at these requests. So now we added those. And as I mentioned, we removed a lot of outdated, redundant uses. There was like 4 different references to like different type of like dog grooming businesses. Let's just one example. There's antiquated terms from the 1930s that we don't really use anymore, so that was removed. Another concentration, a lot of focus area is regarding temporary uses. So we updated the section regarding temporary uses to kind of clarify the time frames for use, where you could have these temporary uses, and organizing a table to be more user-friendly for residents. We added new uses that we saw that were happening that weren't included in the previous ordinance, like when people want to have like grand openings or have pop-up temporary activations on vacant land. It's something that we wouldn't be able to regulate, and we might need to say no to those. But this is kind of, as I mentioned, just applying like common sense to look at these requests. It clarifies permitting requirements and procedures, and we also saw that we also want to exempt some certain like public facilities, government facilities, and school events, because usually that's something that usually those agencies are really well control those types of uses.
Mr. Hernandez, I have a
Yes.
quick question. I'm sorry. And I think this is really big here in the Imperial Valley as a whole, but the animal raising projects. So we have so many students who participate in 4-H. And so with these zonings, and it would allow, depending on the size of the animal that they would be raising, are we looking at relaxing those a little, or just putting structure behind it?
So in that particular aspect, nothing has changed. So just really briefly, the student would submit an application, totally free, of course. We review it, and we just give them, we issue like basically approval letter. So nothing changed regarding the regulations, just kind of, as I mentioned, a lot of kind of cleanup work. There's certain, that specific animal raising was kind of mentioned like 2 places in the zoning ordinance, so we kind of clear it up so that just to make sure that it's consistent, that there's no kind of ambiguity later regarding which section should be enforced.
Good. Thank you for the
Yes,
clarification.
but you're right. We do get a lot of requests.
Yes.
And this really helps out, just kind of like ensuring that the applicants are basically have that approval letter in case there's any type of neighborly disputes. And the next section is regarding ADUs. So admittedly, there wasn't a lot of changes to this. The only change is that we increased the maximum height to be consistent with the maximum height for any type of like single family dwelling, and this is to conform to state law. And there were also other kind of changes just to based on state law and practice. So we adopted our ADU ordinance back in 2021, 2022, but we're just making minor changes to that. Zoning, land use development standards. So this would be a major change. So we're amending the interior side yard setbacks for single-family residential from 5 and 10 feet to 5 and 5 feet. This is consistent with other cities in Imperial County. This is something that I brought up to the Community Enhancement Task Force back in, I think, in January of this year to recommend this. And this is just to provide developers kind of more room to develop these properties, and it'd be consistent with other cities in Imperial County. Other changes from the general plan are requiring specific plans for developments of 40 acres. So that's a pretty substantial development. So that's something that we're requesting so that we have the right information to provide to the city council. Limit warehousing space for retail uses. So this is a result of kind of applicants or people questioning like having these large vacant stores, and ideally to them they wanted to convert it to an entire warehouse, but we thought like, first of all, that's not really the spirit of the general commercial zone. And also we didn't want to like basically convert those into warehouses. Then there'll be little inventory for traditional retail uses. So there's limits on that. Adding maximum floor area ratio for hotels. So that's floor area ratio is a standard that we apply to determine like the bulk of the building. And this is in response to the hotel development that's going around the Imperial Valley Mall, and that require a specific type of FAR to allow that. That's something that we want to encourage the hotel development around the Imperial Valley Mall. So this is a response to that. We modified certain setback requirements for specific uses and zones, and we added standards for water dispensing facilities. So that's something else that we didn't have in our zoning code to regulate.
Mr. Nuns, can I
Yes.
ask you about these water dispensing facilities? Are you talking about like those kiosks that sell water and that you can go and take your bottle and fill them up with?
Yes.
Is that what you're referring
Yes.
to?
I know there was a lot more applications probably like 10 years ago, but
Yes.
once in a while we have people inquire about that. And especially concerning is like when it's located in a parking lot, and how do you like
Yes.
navigate
Yes.
between
Yes.
like, people like waiting to fill up the water and then people driving in the parking lots.
Mhm.
So next series of slides are pretty are changes that we're implementing to ensure that we can better utilize some of these infill development areas in the city. What we've seen is, there could be properties that are zone R2, R3 that do allow multifamily development, but because of its size or these other requirements on open space, for instance, or parking, it can't really develop to that density. So what the city is proposing is reducing the amount of open space required for multifamily units. And that's specifically the multifamily units that are between 2 and 4 units in size, because that's the ones that we see that would require relief. And as I mentioned several times, this is to kind of help concentrate development in the interior areas of town that are already zoned R2, R3, but for some reason they haven't developed to that density. And but also we're reducing the amount of open space, but we're being very specific about what type of amenities that we want to see there. Having some type of outdoor area where people could sit down, relax outside, for instance. Those are the type of requirements that weren't stipulated in the previous code. And a large part of the work was basically removing the subjective language. So that's things like, the development, should do this. Now we say shall. The city encourages this, and we're being really specific so that there's so it's more black and white. There's less discretion involved in the staff, and it's really clear to the developer what they need to do. So that was extensive change to the residential development standards. Removing redundant, outdated language. We also made sure that it's consistent with the adopted mixed-use design standards. And we also made changes to carport requirements. That's something very popular in El Centro. People have carports in front of their houses. So we made adjustments to that to make sure that it's consistent with the will of the community. We also, and I'll go into this detail, made some changes to where parking areas could be on some of these multifamily lots. and also street tree regulations and vehicle access standards. And we didn't do this just by kind of picking numbers. We had someone kind of draw up some site plans to make sure that what we're proposing is going to work. It's going to be feasible. That we're actually we're actually implementing something that developers would take advantage of. So one instance is we're allowing people to have certain parking facilities in the front of the in front of their homes, allowing tandem parking in certain instances. That's when people park kind of behind each other. That when you have some type of not agreement, but some type of authorization from the property owner to make sure that there's no one blocking each other. We're reducing officer requirements for these 2 to 4 unit multifamily buildings, removing the requirement to have a guest parking space, modifying the methodology to calculate off-street parking for commercial uses to be more consistent with other cities. And another change is we're reducing the standard length of off-street parking spaces. Currently they're 20 feet, and what's being proposed is 18 feet, which is consistent with other jurisdictions in Southern California.
Mr. Hernandez, can you go back, excuse
Yes.
me, on that second bullet point that you have allows tandem parking and parking in front yards under some circumstances? Isn't there an ordinance regarding parking in front, in the front yard?
Yeah, okay. That wouldn't allow someone to park on unapproved surfaces. It would have to be a parking lot, and this would only apply to multifamily development. So,
Multifamily,
yes,
okay, not single
so
family,
not
okay.
single family. No,
All right.
not single family, and something else. Yeah, that will only apply to those types of uses that require that amount of parking.
Okay, that makes a difference.
Yeah,
Okay.
and just in the next couple of slides, something else that we've seen is sometimes we get a lot of requests for people who have single-family homes and they want to pave their entire front yard for more parking, and we didn't really have kind of like something we could show the applicants, right? Like, you cannot do that. That's something that we've developed and included in the ordinance, because that's something that we want to avoid, having someone just pave the entire area and remove all the green space or the front yard. So there's a requirement to for new development to screen properties along Interstate 8. This is something that was introduced in the general plan update, allowing hedges to be used as screening under certain conditions, expanding the types of fencing permitted around multifamily development. This photo is, I think it's of the Hirosol apartments on Adams Avenue, I believe. So it would allow this type of fence around multifamily development. We modified the recommended tree, shrub, and ground cover list to remove a lot of species that were invasive. We put a limit on how many palm trees people could use to meet the tree requirement for the city. Also add spacing requirements for landscaping and add landscape minimums, as what I mentioned about the certain area of your front yard that you cannot have paved. Some other things that we're changing is, and these changes are in Chapter 29 zoning and Chapter 18 offenses and miscellaneous provisions. And this is a way so that the city can review these requests to solve barbed wire, but more importantly, certain businesses wanting to install electric fencing. There's been, I think the last 2 years, have been a lot more requests to do this, and currently, the state law states that if the city doesn't have an ordinance, doesn't have a right to regulate that, then we will have to allow that. That's something that we want to control a bit, maybe. And what's being proposed is limiting that type of fencing along kind of the main thoroughfares of town. Usually, what people want to install is fencing is because they have like a large fleet that they want to protect, and they have electric fencing. Those are usually restricted into like industrial areas, not areas not highly traveled. So what the proposed ordinance would do is allow them to install that, but it would have to go to the administrative committee. So that's a committee made up of several department heads of the city, and it also includes guidelines on how to evaluate these requests.
Can I ask a question about
Yes.
this? When I saw it in your report, and it was concerning to me. I mean, forgive my naiveness, but can you give me an example of a probably realistic request that has been submitted or that you have seen where a company might want to incorporate an electrified fence?
Sure. So we had requests from IV Transit to secure their fleet, also from ARC too. And what's been happening is people go in and they steal the catalytic converters from the vehicles overnight. So
14 of them.
yeah, so this is something that they want to install. The most recent example is something that we're kind of addressed with this ordinance. Law regarding having really high visible signage, having limits on the voltage. And
Is it-
also like you have to have, this is clear, but there has to be like a fence before the electrified fence.
Is it fair to say that a lot of these businesses that are considering this have already attempted to create security or to dissuade people from breaking in by incorporating a barbed wire fence? And since they're seeing that that is not working, they're now requesting for a second level, and that's why we're entertaining this, or you have incorporated this into your updates?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
And just looking at the newspaper articles, it's because people have like large fleets of vehicles and they're having issues with them safe.
Okay, thank you.
This is another major revision to our zoning code ordinance I want to spend some time talking about. So Chapter 29 has regulations on plan unit developments, and the intention with plan unit developments is to provide flexibility to city staff, the city council to review some of these subdivision requirements and give more flexibility on from some of the development standards. However, we have seen that very few people apply for them. So what we're proposing is kind of making some changes to our zoning code to entice people to develop. And the main advantage would be to allow people to develop on smaller lots, cluster development. I have some examples in the next couple of slides. But at the same time, something I want to stress is that you're going to maintain the current zoning. So the current density. So right now, the R1 zone has a current density of 7 dwelling units per acre. And what we're proposing is basically reducing the lot size and having other requirements on having open spaces to still meet that density. So these are a couple of prototypes that we've had done. These are some examples from other projects in northern San Diego County where they've implemented this, and this would all still meet our current density requirements. So it's a lot of it is having kind of interior driveways, having that shared space amongst the residents that to, as I mentioned, still meet the density requirements, but allow more flexibility to development. This is another example that we've seen. So there's always we always have a lot of requests for the area of we call it El Dorado Colonia, south of Cruikshank and north of the around Pico area. You have these large lots, but they're large and skinny, and they really facilitate a lot of development. So what we're proposing is allowing PUD development to basically allow this type of development. So these are some prototypes. These aren't applications or anything like that. This is kind of a prototype of like what will happen if we implemented this requirement in El Centro, and like can we still meet the density requirements? Can we still provide create some type of flexibility to the developer to build units on there? And all of these, it was still required to go to Planning Commission, City Council approval. So this isn't. And there will be public hearings on these specific projects if the ordinance is approved as presented. Okay, so next section. So On the subdivision ordinance, we added references to complete streets concept that was incorporated on mobility element. Now, this is a requirement from, I think, from back in 2010, that whenever we updated our mobility element, we needed to incorporate complete streets concepts. And what that really means is it just gives the city staff flexibility to apply these type of complete streets concepts like traffic calming, incorporating bicycle and pedestrian facilities in when we're reviewing new projects. We moved certain sections from chapter 24 to a different chapter in the municipal code, clarified lot design standards. There are certain instances where we would be reviewing the regulations, and there's some inconsistencies with some of the dimensions and the text. We removed some redundant regulations regarding conduit and fiber optics cable that are already incorporated in there. So this is kind of just cleaning up the language. We're not removing this requirement at all. And a large change I think a lot of people would see is removing the parkway standards. So Centro, unlike other cities in Imperial County, they have this requirement to have a parkway in front of the house between the sidewalk and the curb. Other cities, they don't have the requirement, so the sidewalk is right up against the street. These are both photos from El Centro, just want to point that out. And this would remove the parkway requirement for local streets. So those are the streets that they have minor traffic. There shouldn't be a lot of concern regarding a lot of traffic going on there. We still want to keep those parkways on the busier streets because it still adds like a distance from pedestrians to the street. But for the vast majority of streets are local streets, and if approved, they wouldn't have to have the parkway requirement. So regarding chapter 23, as I mentioned before, we're removing a lot of these requirements from chapter 24 into chapter 23. It was a better fit in that chapter. We're applying uniform standards to all alleys and streets. We're also incorporating traffic calming measures when we review applications for subdivisions. So that's if you're gonna have a long expanse of a street, there needs to be some type of way to stop traffic aside from having a stop sign. It could be a bulb out, it could be maybe a curve in the street, has some type of way to regulate speed. And this is a lot of stuff I mentioned regarding incorporating the complete streets section into our ordinance. And as I mentioned, we kind of really did a good job of clearing up the code. We reviewed some of the permanent procedures. There was some obsolete language and some inconsistencies that was addressed regarding CUPs. We modified certain permanent processes in accordance with state law. For instance, state law prevents basically the city requiring to issue CUP in certain instances for residential uses. So that was adjusted and amended. We clarified that temporary uses of large assemblages of people for more than 10 days should now be reviewed by the Planning Commission. I don't know if you remember, maybe earlier this year, I brought before a conditional use permit for this like bounce inflatable obstacle course. Yeah, and we thought that was maybe unnecessary to go to the city council for that type of approval. But still to control it, we're just changing it to require the Planning Commission to approve that. Making minor corrections to the zoning code, removing outdated land uses like adult cabaret, automobile impound, and where automobile impound, it was just that that term was used to represent like junkyards and also where people would store your car that gets towed. So we made sure to differentiate between those two terms. Mini warehouse, which was used in some places in the city code to refer to like mini self-storage facilities. We updated a lot of the existing definitions to include some of these new terms like artisan manufacturing, home occupations, mobile food facilities, We added ghost kitchens, commissaries, things like that. Adding more definitions. I gotta commend our consultant too. She really did a good job of going through the entire ordinance, making sure that everything's consistent, removing outdated references to state law, typos, things like that, making sure it's very clear and obvious. Regarding garbage and rubbish, so we took the opportunity to clarify that, and that something that we've had dealt with in downtown zone is people didn't have access to a trash can that was being picked up, so they would be using the city's trash cans on the street. So that would be in response to that. It also but it also allows for common storage, trash enclosure to be shared by a group of businesses, because sometimes space is limited in the downtown area to provide that flexibility to businesses. So this project, the recommendations were brought before the Planning Commission last month, or in July. They approved it as presented. They did make some certain changes. They want to make sure that the zoning code distinguishes between mobile homes and RVs. The existing language kind of lumped them together, which wasn't an accurate representation of the intention of the zoning code. And they also had some comments regarding the hazardous fencing standards, and that's the barbed wire fencing and the electric fencing. So the City Council's staff is recommending that the City Council approve the ordinance as amended. I'm available for any questions, and thank you.
So I will now open the public hearing, Mr. Hernandez. Okay, is there anyone wishing to speak on this item, either in chambers or remotely? Madam City Clerk, do we have any? No requests? Okay, all righty. So taking that into consideration, this public hearing is now closed, and I will bring it back to council for any questions or comments, even though I know that we've been asking questions along the way, but any additional questions or comments from Mr. Hernandez?
I did, just real quick. So in regards to the barbed wire and the electric fencing, from a safety perspective, whether it's through the police department or fire, I think of individuals that could, obviously I know the signs are posted and obviously we know that they're dangerous, but I'm wondering if we're going to see individuals that are going to get hurt by it, or children that might get hurt by it. And then I also think about being very specific about where it's going to be and making sure it's commercial, area, and, not 2 blocks away from Imperial Avenue and so forth. So all that was considered and discussed, or?
Yes. So the current state law, you cannot have this in a residential area. You have to have it in a commercial industrial area. And when we applied that same requirement in our zoning code, and also we have certain areas designated as visual enhancement areas in the city. So those are main thoroughfares like Imperial Avenue, Adams Avenue, highly trafficked areas. So what's proposed right now would not allow you to put those in if they're in the public view of those streets. So you shouldn't be seeing barbed wire fences or any more barbed wire fences, or especially these electrified fences along those main thoroughfares. That's something. It's not nice to look at.
Right.
Yeah, it's not nice to look at,
Right.
and but so they wouldn't be allowed there. And regarding incorporating staff feedback, the administrative committee, which is made up of the city manager, the city engineer, building official, the community development department director, the fire chief, and the police chief will also be reviewing these requests.
That's my question.
Yeah, no, I can say that I understand the rationale behind incorporating an electrified fence, and I think that I just have some concerns about it, in the sense that I know that there is hesitation with using tasers because the electrical impulse could affect someone's pacemaker if they happen to have one. An electrical impulse could just kind of affect your heartbeat, and it can create adverse effects, unintended consequences, if the goal here is just to provide protection of property. Is it possible that the unintended consequences that the person who gets electrified ends up facing a far severe consequence by touching the gate as opposed to a barbed wire fence, right? Which at most is looking at a scrape, a gash, as opposed to. So I trust in the judgment of what you're putting together. And the only thing that I would ask is that in the course of observing this throughout the year, that you please let us know what the outcomes were, if my concerns have merit, if they're unfounded whatsoever. But that way we can just kind of make sure that we look back at this and make sure that it works, didn't work, some modifications in the future, and just kind of provide some feedback, please.
Yes, I understand. And just to kind of explain kind of like how the current like scheme to review the current way to review this is currently we're defaulting to like the state regulations, which don't have any local control. Now we're applying these local control. This is one way to allow them. Another option that we could explore is basically not allow them at all. But I wasn't too sure if that was really the will of the community. Now, this specific question was brought to the Plan Commission. They want to provide some flexibility, not straight out prohibition, but that's something that we'll continue to monitor, like the 3 sites that we do have them. Also true.
Mr. Hernandez, just going along that line of questioning, for some reason, I feel like one of the businesses over on East Main, east of Dogwood, don't they have an electrical
Yes,
fence?
that's the
Yeah, they
Penske
do.
site.
Yes.
Yes,
Have
they
we
do.
ever had any issues there with
I have
any
not.
injuries or?
I have not heard of any injuries
Mhm.
there. I think when that was brought up, when that came up, that was kind of the impetus of looking at this. But I haven't heard of any injuries. I don't know if there's anyone from the fire department that could
Madam Mayor,
respond to that, but I haven't heard of it.
Mhm.
I've heard that there's no injuries but less crimes.
But the
It's sort of a
deterrent
deterrent.
is working.
So if I may too, like, so 7,000 volts on that fence is meant to deter, not to harm, right? It's so a taser, and PD can correct me if I'm wrong, is about 50,000 volts in comparison, right, to what you get. So it's not quite 6 times or 8 times, somewhere around there. The difference, it's alternating current, so it's not like you get shocked and you're stuck to it, right? Which makes it easier also for the person to, be a deterrent, to step away from it. The reality though is that any type of current could potentially cause an issue at the, with the right conditions. So in general, right, most, people that come in contact with fences such as that won't suffer. But in the right conditions, with the right, situation, potentially somebody could. If they had a pacemaker, for example, it could, cause some sort of issue. Or it could also cause other issues to be triggered in somebody, if they suffer from seizures, for example, and things like that.
Let us know what happens in a year or as time unfolds. Because the state does allow it. So it's not like it's not tried and tested. I just want to make sure that it doesn't create adverse unintended consequences of what we're trying to address here is just securing, allowing a company to secure their property. And if that security ends up causing more problems, then we can revisit this. But as of right now, it's just a concern. We're not looking at a list of negative outcomes, right?
Okay. Alrighty. So colleagues, can I get a motion to approve the first reading of the ordinance? Okay, so that first reading is adopted 5-0. So approval of ordinance number 24-03, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of El Centro, California, repealing and readopting Municipal Code Chapter 29 zoning in its entirety, amending Municipal Code Chapter 12, garbage, rubbish, and other solid waste, Chapter 18, offenses and miscellaneous provisions, Chapter 23, streets, sidewalks, and public places, and Chapter 24, subdivision regulations to meet the requirements of the current law, waiving reading and approve as first reading and authorize city clerk to place on the next agenda for the second reading and adoption. Alrighty. Thank you very much, colleagues. And now we move on to um, item number 11. So discussion and any necessary action to award contract to STC Traffic Incorporated for professional engineering services. And we have a presentation by Mr. Abraham Campos, our Public Works Director and City Engineer. Mr. Campos?
Hi, good evening,
it away.
Honorable Mayor and council members. This is an item that's in following with some of the measures and the outcomes of complete streets and part of some of the goals of the plan. And earlier to this item that we're presenting today, earlier in the meeting, council approved the plans and specs for the ATP project, which brings some improvements to the intersections Imperial and Barbara Worth, Imperial and Holt, and Imperial and Pepper. This project right now here, the CMAC project, builds on top of that project that was recently approved earlier tonight. This project starts with it's a fiber interconnection. It interconnects or signalizes between Alcatillo and Main Street along Imperial Avenue by providing a fiber conduit, which is the most reliable and steady way to communicate between signals, with the goal here to get more green lights as you're moving through the city. As we know, we're adding traffic. We opened Imperial Avenue extension, and we continue to grow. So we're continuing to find ways to modernize our system to be more efficient and to allow better traffic movements throughout the city. This is again a CMAQ grant through ICTC with their quality benefits by the better flow of traffic. The funding is a CMAQ funding, 85,000, and together with a local match and LTA funding of 12,000 for a total budget of 97,000 for this project. This project awards the design services to STC, and then once the design is done, we'll be coming back to council to council specs and authorize us to bid the project sometime in the middle of next year. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Colleagues, any questions from Mr. Campos? I do have one question because you mentioned the Imperial Avenue extension. The stoplights at Imperial and Wake, when will they be functioning?
Crossing my finger here in about a week.
In about a week? Okay.
Yes,
Mr. Campos.
it's been a delay from the contractor or scheduling. It's apparently that contractor is very busy, very solicited across the state, and it was scheduled for it. So hopefully that's take.
Let's keep our fingers crossed. Thank you. Okay. And so, so that resolution is adopted, and that would be resolution number 24-68, resolution of the City Council of the City of El Centro approving a consulting agreement with STC Traffic Incorporated for professional engineering services. Thank you very much, Mr. Campos. Okay, and now we are moving on to, we're going to skip to item number 13 because we've already presented number 12, and that would be to ratify a letter of support for SB 1070 for the Imperial Valley Healthcare District. Presentation by Mr. Cedric Cesenia, our city manager.
Honorable Madam Mayor and council members, the letter before you is a ratification of a letter that was sent to as requested by Senator Stephen Padilla's office for support of SB 1070. As you know, it relates to the Imperial Valley Healthcare District. This bill in particular addresses delays in providing the necessary information for recommending a funding source for the district. This pushes the deadline for a ballot measure onto or to or before November of 2026 election. I hope you understood that part. My apologies. SB 1070 is currently awaiting the governor's signature, sitting on his desk. The city manager's office, on your behalf, with your signature, submitted a letter of support on September 11th of 2024, and is requesting that as a council you ratify this action to encourage the governor to sign the bill into law.
Okay, and that that letter is ratified with the vote of 5-0. Okay, and we'll move on to item number 14. So that would be to ratify the follow-up letter of support of SB 583, the Salton Sea Conservancy. Another presentation by Mr. Cedric Cesenia, our city manager.
Madam Mayor, thank you. So this letter is ratification, a request for ratification of the follow-up letter, as you stated. And this previous letter was submitted to the governor's office for SB 583. This bill aims to establish the Salton Sea Conservancy within the Natural Resource Agency. As you are aware, the Salton Sea at one point was a resort destination, now faces ecological and public health challenges due to the high salinity and the shrinking size of the lake. The city initially submitted a letter of support for this bill in March of 2023, and a follow-up letter was submitted on September 11th of this year to urge the governor to sign the bill into law. The governor has until September 30th to take action on SB 583.
Right, colleagues. Okay, the ratification of that letter passes 5-0. Now we move on to item number 15, which is to ratify a follow-up letter of support for SB 1105, which would be for paid leave for farm workers during climate emergencies. And Mr. Cedric Cesenia, take it away, please.
Yes, Madam Mayor, this is the last in a series of letters for ratification. This particular letter is in support of SB 1105, which enables farm workers to use paid sick leave during climate emergencies to protect their health and their safety. The city initially submitted a letter of support for the bill in April of 2024 at the request of Senator Stephen Padilla's office. This follow-up letter was submitted on September 11th to urge the governor to sign the bill into law. Once again, in this particular case as well, the governor has until September 30th to act on the bill, and it's important for the city to continue to support this particular effort.
Okay. And ratification of that letter is passes and is adopted 5-0. And now we move on to item number 16, discussion on any necessary action regarding the appointment of a voting delegate and alternates for the League of California Cities Annual Conference and Expo, which is to be held October the 16th through the 18th, 2024 in Long Beach, California. And so as we know that we appoint a delegate and an alternate to vote at the business meeting at that conference. And so at this time, I would like to ask for anyone interested in serving as the voting delegate and the alternate.
Madam Mayor, who will be attending this conference?
I currently.
Okay, so all of us. Yes.
No, I'm hearing no.
No? Four of us?
It'll be 4.
Okay.
Except Councilmember Garcia.
Madam Mayor, I've had the opportunity to be a voting delegate, therefore I afford that opportunity to my colleagues.
And I too have been a voting delegate. So, I mean, there's nothing wrong with serving once again, but
I defer to
Councilmember
either
Carter.
one of you. So I've served also, so I defer to either one of you.
Councilmember Carter, would you? Is that okay? Alrighty, so you would be the voting delegate, and who would like to serve as the alternate? Member Oliva?
Would you like to?
Okay, alrighty. Councilmember Oliva will be the alternate. Alrighty, so that we've got the appointments there. And so we move on to item number 17, discussion and any necessary.
Mayor, that needs a vote, please.
Oh, and I'm so sorry. Okay, there we go. And those appointments pass 5-0. Okay. Now we can move on to item number 17, discussion and any necessary action regarding the appointment to Friends of El Centro Community Services Foundation. And I recommend that we appoint Ms. Jessie Villanueva to serve as on the Friends of El Centro Community Foundation with the term ending on June the 30th, 2026. From my understanding is that Ms. Villanueva serves as the co-president of the Seroptimus Club of El Centro, and so she is quite the go-getter. And so I recommend that we appoint Ms. Jessie Villanueva. And that appointment to the Friends of El Centro Community Services Foundation passes 5-0. Thank you, Ms. Villanueva. Is that? Okay. And so now we move on to task force reports and from each one of the members on the council. And so maybe what I'd like to do is start with Councilmember Carter.
I haven't really attended any of the events, but I have done a lot of civic duty and talked to people out in the community. And that's been, and thank you, Mr. Hernandez, for the Planning Commission report, because that answers a lot of questions that the community is having. So I will be telling them to go and look at the replay, because this really answered a lot of questions. And then they have questions about the parks, and I did tell them I would talk to Adriana about that. And then they had questions about transportation. I did meet with David about that. So it's just been about answering the questions of the people. That's just been my concern since the last time we met. That was what, a month ago? So, but that's basically my report. But I have the streets, the sidewalks, and the public places. I am going to pass this along because that was very good information. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Councilmember Garcia?
Nothing to report at this time.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Cardenas Singh?
Yes, it's been a busy month. One of my favorite events that I got to participate in was actually provided by Congressman Dr. Raul Reese, which was our Veterans University, really affording an opportunity for veterans to understand the filing process, their benefits. And I think the most important component was to make sure that they were able to navigate the VA process, which could be very overwhelming and just requires so much assistance. So that was great. And then also talking about all the benefits that veterans can qualify for. Had the opportunity to attend the press release also by Congressman Dr. Raul Reese in regards to the Clinical Trials Modernization Act. Thank you, Madam Mayor, for sharing your story. And I appreciate that. And it's heartfelt, and I'm sure many other individuals who are battling cancer are really going to benefit from these clinical trials. So thank you for being brave and bold and sharing your story. Attended the 9/11 stair climb. Imperial Valley College also had a 9/11 ceremony, really highlighting the El Centro Fire Department, and the keynote speaker was Battalion Chief Ainza, which was great to see representation on behalf of our city. El Grito in Calexico, that was a coordinated effort between the Mexican Consulate, San Diego State Imperial Valley Campus, and Calexico Rotary. Attended the second annual Adult Center art exhibit. Had the opportunity to go to the groundbreaking of the Lotus Ranch Phase 2. Attended the Imperial County Association of Realtors fundraiser for CASA. And yesterday had the 2-on-2 with the IID directors and the general manager. And on Friday, we'll be attending the mobility conference this Friday. That is the end of my report, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councilmember Oliva?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Colleagues, since we last met, there have been some significant amount of meetings and events. We can clearly see that we're coming out of the summer. But one of the events that I did attend that was heartfelt was the funeral services for Mr. Tony Tirado from Calexico. He did pass, I think, August 3rd. And so his services were late August. And I could say that he was a great mentor for me, somebody that I was able to call up when I was barely dipping my feet in these waters. And so it was very sad to hear that he had passed, and to see his family and to give them our condolences was certainly something I wanted to make sure that you were aware of. Next, we did have a finance ad hoc committee that updated us in towards the presentation that we saw today. I also attended the Adult Center art exhibit, and I have to say, our seniors have great art skills. I mean, phenomenal art skills. They need to put that stuff up and auction it out. Like, it's really great. And just, I know she wasn't gonna brag about her own mom, but every time I was going down the exhibit and I would say, man, that's a really nice painting. It just happened to be Miss Carolina Singh's mom, who was the artist behind it. And so I have to say, she's a great artist.
She was so proud of it.
Yeah,
So proud of herself.
I had no idea. So it was like a blind, wow, that one's nice. And it just happened to be her mom's, and it happened like 2 or 3 times. And I just said, okay, she needs to stop painting.
She had no idea, but it was very therapeutic. My mother is my father's caretaker, and so it really allowed her to just have that space to be able to paint and do something for herself. So it's much more greater than the actual result. It's the therapy that comes with it as well. So thank you for that.
But there were a lot of other members of the program. And so thank you to the department and to Gus for providing them that space and allowing them to get together. Next, I did attend the ICTC commission meeting as the alternate to Ms. Carolina Singh. And they received a lot of updates. I think the 2 that I would highlight the most is Caltrans gave an update on the many projects that they have throughout the county. And one of the ones that kind of caught my attention was a Forester traffic study. And what really kind of caught my attention to it was because, as many of you know, there is a 111 Brawley bypass that opened up about 2011. And that was because Brawley was in favor of having major trucks bypass Brawley and just kind of make it through Westmoreland. And one of the options that they raised was, as they were looking at Forester and bulking it up, was a Westmoreland bypass, which I thought was strange because I thought Westmoreland was heavy dependent on the gasoline sales tax that it receives on a lot of these trucks and travelers. And so they just said that it was an option that they were looking at, wasn't necessarily that they were going to move forward. But sadly enough, apparently no representative from Westmoreland has shown up to ICTC in quite a while. So I really hope somebody is listening to this and shows up and speaks up on behalf of your community, because I got some weird looks like, why is El Centro saying something on behalf of Westmoreland? I don't know. After that, I did also participate at the Navy League dinner with yourself and Ms. Carolina Singh, right? For those of you that are able to make it, the first Tuesday of the month, the Navy League hosts a phenomenal steak dinner at the Moose Lodge in Imperial. It's fantastic. And shout out to the Coast Guard commander from San Diego, who came out here and gave us a great presentation to better understand what the Coast Guard does, and specifically what the Coast Guard does here in this sector of Southern California, San Diego, and Mexico, as opposed to, and he gave us examples of what different machinery and equipment they may have in Northern California or in Alaska, where he was stationed at for many years, and just kind of giving us that difference. I attended the Meadows Union Elementary School groundbreaking project for AB 617, and that project is funding that they received in order to provide infrastructure for electrifying buses, as well as paving of unpaved portions of their school. I'd also attended the Veterans University held by Representative Raul Reese. We had a grand opening of the Ancillary Services Building from ECRMC. And that was the official grand opening of the new building that has been under construction for many years. And lastly, colleagues also attended the Regional Chamber of Commerce Speakeasy event. And I raised that just because I want to give a special thanks to Adriana and her department for helping us out in putting together that event and for making that event special for not only the participants, but for the attendees as well. I greatly appreciated all of your hard work and your staff's hard work. With that, Madam Mayor, I yield back.
Gosh. Well, Councilmember Oliva has mentioned quite a few of the events that we all participated in. I know that Councilmember Carolina Singh mentioned the press conference that was held here in our council chambers with Congressman Dr. Raul Reese. advocating for the modernization of Clinical Trials Act. And I participated in that event because back in October of 2021, I was diagnosed with stage 4 kidney cancer, and I agreed to participate in a clinical trial through the Moores Cancer Center at UCSD. And as a patient, I provided a testimonial of my experience with that. And so I am so blessed, and I thank God every day for not only for my oncologist and her team, but also for the healing that I have experienced from my participation in those clinical trials. And it's just like I just can't thank everyone and God enough, for His healing mercies. And so let me see, we also had it was a security presentation out at NAF at the Mirage Club. The commander out there invited us to listen to, what the federal government and locally what we are doing to, team up in the event of a natural disaster or an event, an incident. And so, that is something that they do every year. And so we were invited to go out there. Also, as Councilmember Oliva, he and I sit on the Finance Ad Hoc Committee, and, a shout out to the Finance Department for all their hard work and dedication in and working with Mr. Heath on updating our finances, and it's just getting better and better, by the month. And so let's see. Also attended the county hosted a Lithium Valley excise tax meeting, and all of the city representatives were invited to hear their presentation of how they plan to allocate funding to the cities, once lithium is the proceeds from all of the extraction of lithium in the valley. So I know that there's probably more work to do because I think many of those cities did not agree with the allocations, and so we'll see where that ends up. Also attended the grand opening of the new ancillary building at ECRMC. Was at the 9/11 Memorial Stair Climb. Was participated in the Speakeasy Challenge out at the Casa de Mañana building, and again, thanks to Adriana, to the team that came together to decorate and make us look like a very classy lounge. And so let's see. And in addition to all of that, I would like to first start out by congratulating my friend, Mr. Gustavo Ibarra, okay, for being promoted to the Recreation Supervisor for the city's Community Services Department on August the 20th. He has been with the city for 14 years, multi-talented individual, and the city is so fortunate to have such a dedicated employee. So congratulations, Gus. He and I were Optimist Club members together, and we would sit out in the heat and sell fireworks. And, so I had an opportunity to really get to know Gus, and he's been my friend since then. So I would also like to congratulate Councilmember Tomas Oliva, who was recently appointed as the Vice Chair of the Environmental Quality Policy Committee for the 2025 League of California Cities. The policy committee focuses on key environmental issues such as air, water, solid waste management, recycling, and more. So congratulations, Councilmember Oliva. We are confident that you will represent our community with distinction and pride. And just also would like to invite everyone to Saturday's El Grito event. And I know that Parks and Rec and all of that department is involved in what has become such a popular event. And so it is scheduled at 6 p.m. at Buckland Park. This year's event also includes a salsa contest by some of our vendors, and it's limited to the vendors, okay, because I asked if it was open to the public, but so I'm sure that event will spice up the night even more. And then we will have, let's see, great music and 55 vendors, wow, with various food and products for sale. Alrighty, and I know that I know that we're looking for some judges for the salsa contest, and I'll get that to you. I also want to invite everyone to the Jacaranda Gardens Apartments grand opening, which is scheduled for October the 3rd at 10 a.m. Located at 1625 North Waterman, or, right across the street from First Responders Park and Fire Station number 3. These affordable housing apartments play a crucial role in helping us meet our goal of providing accessible, affordable living options for our community residents. And I would like to end my comments by sending out a special thank you to our police department. A recent incident at one of our high schools understandably raised concerns within the community. And because I work at a school, it also raised concerns at our school. Our officers responded swiftly and effectively to alleviate concerns and ensure the safety and well-being of all. And we truly appreciate your dedication to keeping our schools and our community safe. And, thank you for that. And I know that
Thank
Sunday night, you were also out there with a checkpoint on Imperial Avenue, because I could see it from my house. At first I thought, oh my gosh, what happened there? It was an accident. But then I thought, the flow of traffic is going that way, but it's not coming in this way. But I thought, pretty cool, so congratulations on that. And I hope that you had a successful outcome to that checkpoint. Okay, and I will now turn it over to our city manager, Mr. Cedric Cesenia.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think everything's been said as far as activities and attendance to meetings. The only thing I'd like to add is a thank you to our city staff for all their great work. They're very dedicated staff, and not because I work here or because they work here, but because they truly are, out there doing all the good work on behalf of the people of El Centro. So thank you guys for everything from every single part of the city. I appreciate everything you guys do. Additionally, the city workforce did grow by 2 additional new members. We have a new animal control officer, as well as today we swore in an engineering technician. So, with that in mind, basically, thank you, and I'll turn it right back over to you, Madam Mayor. Oh, and Betsy has one additional item.
Okay.
So we're getting to this at the end of the agenda rather than under public comments. Gus Garcia, who is with the Center for Contract Compliance, which is a nonprofit that monitors projects and reports them to the Department of Industrial Relations if they believe there are issues with them, sent an email. He asked that it be read in full. It's rather long, and I will summarize it. He is basically requesting that the bid for landscaping and maintenance district contracts have tree trimming separated out because, to summarize, tree trimming requires specific licenses. He believes there are safety concerns regarding tree trimming, which would lead to a public safety risk. He says that there are different prevailing wage categories for tree trimming and general landscaping, and summarizes that. He asked for an opportunity to discuss that. In response, Javier Villaverde and Adriana Nava did some research and confirms that the city is compliant with the documents. The contractor they use for trees and palm trees greater than 15 feet in height is one who has the required licenses and who pays the different prevailing wage rates. Sections of the applicable law exempt incidental pruning of trees measuring less than 15 inches in height, and the small tree removal addressed under this contract would be exempted from the tree trimming concerns that were set out by Mr. Garcia.
Mayor, just a reminder, we have a meeting next Tuesday at 6 p.m. here at City Hall.
Yes.
City Council Chambers.
You want me to repeat that, or?
If you like.
Yes, just a reminder that we have a special meeting scheduled next Tuesday, September the 24th, here at in Council Chambers at 6 p.m. Alrighty. And on that final note, it is now 8:05 p.m. and this meeting is adjourned.